Monday, July 14th, 11:35 in the morning. You are watching the All 32 Pod. He is Will Parkinson. I am Mike Giardi. We are a proud member of the CLNS Media Network. The show, as always, brought to you by the #1 daily fantasy sports app in North America, Prizepicks. Download today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 when you play your first 5 Prizepicks. Run your game. So, training camp has actually started for some teams. We still have a bunch of second-round picks holding out, which basically comes down to the Texans giving Jaden Higgins a fully guaranteed 4-year contract, and now everybody else who's a second-round pick said, hey, I want that too. So we're kind of at a little standstill there where one side or the other are going to have to give. But what we wanted to do here before we really get into we're going to do this all along as we lead up to the regular season. And once training camp really gets going and there are some things that pluck from different camps, we'll do that. But for now, time to preview the NFC West. We're just going to go by order of finish last year, and it's going to be what I like about what they did, what I don't like. Are they going to be better or worse in our minds than last year? And, of course, if there's an X factor in there that you want to throw in, we'll do it, Will. And that means we got to start with the LA Rams. I'll give you quickly 10-7 last year. Obviously, a playoff victory pushed the Eagles in the NFC divisional round, the only team that pushed the Eagles in the postseason. They were 17th in total DVOA, 10th on offense, 26th in defense, which kind of surprised me a little bit, 19th in special teams. Well, I'll let you kick this off because as everybody knows who watches the All 32 Pod, you are a big fan of the Rams and what they've done. What do you like about the offseason for the Rams?
What do I not like? I think the Rams did a lot of things to me that both said this is what the Rams do, and I think this is why they've been so successful, generally speaking, under Leslie and Sean McVay. They set themselves up for a strong, current season, and then they set themselves up for the future because they know time's ticking with Matt Stafford in terms of his career longevity. This feels like it's it. I think it was, we talked about it, for months. Hey, this might be the last year. He obviously ends up coming back. There was the Giants stuff and the whole 9 yards. So they bring Stafford back. They still have a top 10 quarterback. They still can go compete for a Super Bowl. They also traded back in the first round in the trade we talked a ton about and set themselves up for 2 first-round picks with a team that might not be very good next year. And, hey, if the Rams are really good but the Falcons aren't, maybe they're packaging picks to go up for a quarterback and Sean McVay gets his first kind of homegrown guy. Goff, I know, was homegrown, Jace. It wasn't his pick. But I thought, other than that, I think adding Devontae Adams, on paper at least, I'll get to him in a minute in terms of X factors and things like that, because I think last year, no Cooper Kupp being Cooper Kupp, and he was hurt, and Puka was hurt at times, and Kyron fumbling. Like, there's a ton of talent there. It was a matter of the Rams, as usual, dealt with health. I also liked, again, like the Terrence Ferguson addition to me. Tyler Higbee's been a nice player in the league. I don't think he's a bad player. He's been a nice player. Still have him. If Colby Parkinson, again, a nice tight end. Like, they have some nice players. I think Terrence Ferguson could be a really good player. And there's not a lot of pressure day one. But again, we saw them wanting to trade up for Brock Bowers in the past. We've seen them apparently want to trade up for Colston Loveland. McVay's been chasing that, that dynamic tight end. I don't know if Ferguson's super dynamic, but I think he's a good player. Me and you both liked him coming out. And again, I just think other things they did nice. It kind of depends on your, I like the Puna Ford edition. I talked about that. Even Josiah Stewart, I don't know what he's going to be in the NFL. But I liked him a lot in college, and I felt like, of course, the Rams, end up with him. So to me, it was just, generally speaking, either retaining guys in Stafford or bringing guys in. I thought they did a really nice job of, again, balancing the present and the future. So they're set up short term, and then long term when they have to pay these guys, they'll have a rookie quarterback, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, to me, what I like is the Sean McVay, Stafford relationship continuing because, as you mentioned, there was a point in time there where he was shopping his services. He wanted $50 million a year. The Rams are kind of balking at that because, hey, he's 37. And if you want to look deep at the numbers, you can say there are some signs of decline. The ADOT has dropped a little bit. Sort of the turnover-worthy plays have gone up. Maybe even the highlight reel throws that we've seen Stafford, where we've become accustomed to, the, off the back foot, the no look, laser 35 yards down the field. You're not seeing as much of that. But I just think Stafford understands what McVay wants. McVay understands what Stafford can do. He's a great pilot for this offense, and to be able to have that reunited at least one more year, probably the last year, as you mentioned, I think is really important because it gives the Rams a chance to be a playoff team and a team again that can make a deep run into the postseason. I like the idea too that they went all in. And you say, well, you just mentioned the draft pick and the trading back, but Higbee, they brought him back. He's in his 30s. Havenstein, who's not a great player and he's dealt with injuries, but they brought him back. He's in his 30s. It was like they kind of looked at it and said, well, we could go younger here, but if we're going to bring Matthew back and if we're going to add Devontae Adams, then like, what are we doing? We're trying to win right now. You know, it's similar to what the Steelers are doing in the AFC, right? It's just like, okay, well, look, this is what the window is with this quarterback and maybe with some of the pieces on this roster. So let's just do it. They did that. Of course, I like the Adams addition. He's a different player than Kupp, and he's managed to stay certainly more healthy than Kupp over the last couple seasons. And then, you know what? I'll give you this. It's just, I feel like they're due to have a healthy season, even with the age. Like, I think you see it a lot of times where teams lose games to injury, and then the next year, it just sort of equals out, and you get a little bit better bounce back from that. So to me, I think that's, I feel like they're due for a little benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Again, just more of a feel than it is an actual statistic, but I like it. And lastly, young defensive line. Jared Verse, 4.5 sacks last year, still defensive rookie of the year. He was in the backfield at all times, also really good against the run. Braden Fisk, who I know you loved coming out of the Senior Bowl, really a very good player for them. That defensive line is pretty well stacked.
Yeah.
And
you don't say.
Set them up. Yeah. All right. So what don't you like about what the Rams have done?
Nothing. No. I think, I guess the way I would say is they're putting a lot of eggs into Devontae and Puka, as they should. But Devontae is 33. Gonna be 33. It always falls off a cliff at some point for every receiver. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but we did see kind of a quick drop off with Randy and Julio and all these guys that kind of like, they're great. Andre Johnson, they're great. And it's like, oh my God, they're not great anymore.
Yep.
So again, he needs to be a 2. He does not need to be a 1. But Puka's struggled with injuries. And again, I think he plays the game. He plays the game almost like an offensive or defensive lineman where like it's a car crash every single play. I guess I just don't love the idea of like an older receiver paired with a guy who's been injury prone. You know, he plays through it, but he doesn't not to the fullest extent. Again, I like the move, but again, I'll combine my X factor and what I don't like here is my X factor is just Devontae. Because if he is, they're going to be really damn hard to cover. And, you know, Devontae's a guy who's always been really good, but like obviously all of his success has really come with Aaron Rodgers, and he demands the ball a lot. He's an interesting personality, very unique guy. He's very, and to his credit, it's work. He's very, very confident. What he says is very, it's very unique always. But the point being, like, if him and Puka are healthy and they're at the peak of their powers, or Devontae's 80% and Puka's at the peak of his, like, good luck stopping this offense. I'm a little. There's like 10% of me that's a little worried of like Stafford's older, Devontae's older, Puka's always hurt. The offensive line for the Rams for some reason always seems to be banged up. Like it's like we get into week 1 and it's like, how are 4 of the 5 starters already hurt? Like what are they doing in camp? So again, my point being, it's not necessarily something I'm like, wow, it's a huge concern. I just have a little bit of a concern, and injuries for every team are going to be a concern, no doubt. But I think with the Rams, we've seen, as you mentioned, over the last 4 or 5 years, like when they're healthy, they're probably going to be in the Super Bowl or close. And when they're not, they're going to probably win 6 games. Like that's just unfortunately because they're kind of been a more top heavy team. The only other thing I would say with the Rams that I don't know if I love, I don't know if I love the corner room. I don't think it's bad, and I think their defensive line's really good. And I think it's I mentioned Poona Ford probably far too much, but he's going to be him next to being able to let Fisk kind of do his thing. Verse and Young and these other guys is huge. I think the linebackers are fun. I think they're good they're good backers, right? Like I think the front 7 to me, I don't worry too much about. I just and even the safety room, I like the safety room. I don't hate their corner room, but in a team that we expect to compete for a title, we're going to nitpick. And I think the health on offense and then the corner room on defense, the two rooms where you go, if something goes wrong here that's not Stafford related, it's probably going to be like teams are just picking on Witherspoon, or if Emmanuel Forbes has to play. Like, I watched him last year and I know he ended up getting caught in the whole thing. Like, man, Garrett Wilson, it was bad. It was like, oh my God, this guy should not be in the NFL right now. So that's where I'm a little concerned.
Yeah, that's one of those ones where a pick after Emmanuel Forbes was selected. It was Christian Gonzalez by the Patriots. Just think about Washington's defense had they just
and then they don't have to trade for the corpse of Marshawn Lattimore.
Exactly, and then Lattimore was a disaster.
Else.
Yeah, it's true. It's the butterfly effect, right? What I don't like, you mentioned secondary. There's a reason why they were sniffing around Jalen Ramsey and were connected to Jalen Ramsey, even though we feel like Jalen Ramsey is not the same player that he's been and hasn't been for the last couple of years. You could still make the argument that he's better than what they have, or at least certainly would give them more depth and a better potential if you get the Jalen Ramsey contract drive, whatever thing going on there with him. I don't love the linebacker room.
Yeah, it's fine. The defensive line makes them look better.
Bates, Troy Reader. They drafted the kid Paul out of Ole Miss, who I liked. He's really fast, so maybe he works his way into the lineup sooner rather than later. But that to me is, I think the big thing is just that if it's not an age thing or an injury thing, it's going to be, can the secondary hold up in a big spot?
Don't you feel like, Mike, they're a team, they're one of the 3 or 4 teams at the deadline. Like, we've seen it before. I don't know. Someone falls out of it. I don't know who the name is. I'm not going to start just giving names. Right. I think that's very disingenuous. But like some bigger name, like the way Lattimore last year, again, it didn't end up working. But like Washington was like, oh, we're in it. Like, and we're going to go for it. I wonder, I don't know, maybe the Cowboys are out of it and they want someone to take the Diggs money or something like that. And it's like Diggs is playing well, or who knows who the player is. But I would be interested to see if the Rams play in that water again, especially if they were sniffing around Ramsey. We've seen them make big veteran trades to go for a title in the past, and it's worked. You wonder if they'd do that again.
X factor for me is Puka, and it's we know Puka's an excellent player. He just has to stay healthy. And like I said, I feel like maybe they're due for good luck, but he does play the game really hard. He and Stafford are such on the same page that he really does drive that offense when he's in there. And it's like he's an automatic 12 targets a game, 8, 9, 10. Like he really is that good. You got to stay on the field for them to have the kind of year I think that we assume that they're capable of. All right, let's go to the next team. Let's go to Seattle. But actually, before we do that, let's talk about Prizepicks, because it's the number one daily fantasy sports app. Real easy to get involved. Over 10 million members, billions of dollars in award winnings. Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on 2 up to 6 players to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Look, all kinds of stuff going on. Baseball, basketball, soccer, you've got all that stuff. And then again, we're not too far away from the start of the football season.
We are far closer than people realize.
Yeah, it's actually kind of freaking me out a little bit. I like my summer still. By the way, Red Sox 10 wins in a row. Just throwing that out there.
Whatever, dude.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So just sign up today. Use the code CLNS to get 50 off your first $5. Again, download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get 50 off your first 5. Prizepicks, run your game. All right, so let's get to the team that finished second but did not make the playoffs, and that was the Seattle Seahawks. 10-7 last season in the first year under Mike McDonald. 18th in overall DVOA, 18th on offense, 10th on defense, 10th on special teams. Will, what I like about this, Mike McDonald, I said it before, I have a real good feeling about this coach, the Harbaugh effect, the way he ran that defense. I think you saw it last year, in particular, the second half of the season. The roots for what he wants to do defensively really started to take hold, and that team became a really good defensive football team in the second half of the season. I just have a real good feeling about him and the way he coaches defense. We'll see about the offense. He's now on his second offensive coordinator in his second year as head coach. But I'm betting on this guy. I just think he has that certain something to be a really good head coach. They returned 13 of their top 14 guys on defense. So not only did it take root, but now you're bringing them all back. So now you can sort of, okay, let's stack now. We have this foundation. Now we can build upon it. And you guys have all seen this before. You've heard me talk about it. You've seen it apply on the field. Now continue to go with that. That's it, though. Like, I mean, I really do like the defense as a group. I do like the coach, but I have a lot of other questions. How about you? What do you like?
Yeah, I liked a couple of like smaller additions and then some of the draft picks. I liked Gray Zabel. Like, to me, it's the offensive line needed help, and Gray Zabel just, I think the whole draft process, it was like he feels like a Seahawk, and they obviously end up getting Gray Zabel. He's gonna be an instant, obviously, starter, but I think he's gonna be a plus player right away. I like the addition of DeMarcus Lawrence. I think they need to be a little bit tougher up front, and they need to. And he's a guy who maybe he's not going to be the Tank Lawrence of 10 plus sacks and whatever. Maybe he's a 6-sack guy this year, but he's got a certain mentality that he plays with that I think is going to fit with McDonald. I like the E-Man Warriors, draft pick in terms of, hey, I don't know what he's going to really be in the league. I think projections are kind of all over the place. But if McDonald could get something out of him, which I think he's a guy that, based on scheme and his ability, and we've seen him play with these different safeties and stuff like that, I think he's going to do a good job there. So those are things I liked. I don't hate the Darnold addition, and I know I'm probably higher on Sam than most, but I don't know if it's going to work or not, right? Like, I think nobody, hey, is Sam going to regress? But I think we saw with Baker, like when the light came on, it kind of stayed on. And Baker is who he's really been. But, with Geno and Baker and these guys who were like, oh, 1 year, like they'll regress. They didn't, they kind of were a little up and down at points, but Baker's a top 12 quarterback in the league. Geno's a top 15 quarterback now, and they kind of have evened out a little bit, and they are who they are. I wonder with Sam, hey, like, I had a really good year, and then someone gave me a lot of money and said they want me to be their guy. Like, this is the first time probably since 2019 for Sam, or 2020, where he's like, hey, wow, everyone wants me here because, like, I'm, there's something to that. I don't know if I love the entire situation around him, but I like the idea of he's still a young player. He's an established starter. They weren't going to pay Geno what Geno wanted to be paid in his mid to late 30s. Why not take a gamble on a guy for 2 years? And if it doesn't work, like, the defense should be good enough. I think some of the pieces around him can potentially be good enough. We have to see what happens, but I don't hate. Yeah, I thought the Sam move in a vacuum. Like, what else were they doing when they lost Geno? Like, what were they going to go with? They're going to draft Jackson Dart in the first round, and then they don't get Gray Zabel, and it's like that didn't really calculate for me.
Yeah. I by the way, Leonard Williams last year got some votes for Defensive Player of the Year. Really had an awesome year under him. Will he be better again this year?
Thank Aaron Rodgers for that pick 6.
Jackson Smith-Njigba, love the player. Really part of the reason why I think they moved on from DK is they're like, well, this guy's a better all-around wide receiver than DK is, and we don't have to give him the 5 years on $150 million that the Steelers did. What I don't like, though, in general, is they got the entire offense, right? So you didn't like Grubb as a coordinator, fine. You move on. You hire Kubiak, who was, the toast of the town for 2 weeks to start last season, and then the injuries hit, and there was just there weren't a lot of places for him to go, playing third, fourth string quarterbacks there in New Orleans to play out the season. But you lose Geno, who's a good quarterback, right? DK, Tyler Lockett's gone. So really kind of reworking the room. They had MVS, who, I mean, like, he's been on 9 different teams, it feels like, in the last 5 years, and everybody ends up coming away disappointed. He is strictly a vertical guy, throw it up. And the problem with him is he can take the top off the defense. You just don't know if he's always going to catch it. And then they bring in Kupp, and Kupp and JSN are kind of similar players. Like, so one of those guys going to have to play a little bit more outside than they're accustomed to. So we'll see if that's possible. So my counter to the Darnold thing, and I'm not anti-Darnold. I know I had him low on my quarterbacks list because my big concern is, can you repeat this?
Yeah.
Is that they're betting on him after a career year. Generally, that doesn't always fly well in free agency. And as you mentioned, the situation around him. This is not Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, and this isn't Kevin O'Connell calling plays. This isn't one of the best pass blocking offensive lines in football. This is, okay, they don't know what they're doing at center. They don't know what they're doing at right guard. Zabel's going to start somewhere along that front, right? The tackles, I think, are actually pretty good if they stay healthy. Not great, but good. But it's just like, it's not the same setup. And the marriage between him and Kubiak could be a good one because it's sort of a similar system. So maybe that helps him and helps sort of integrate the pieces around him. But I do have concern about that it's just like there's a lot of pressure on him. There's a lot of money on the table. There are some people in Seattle already like Jalen Milroe, which, come on, Jalen Milroe's got a long way to go as a passer before he gets there. But like that's already being talked about, at least by, I don't know, media fan base. Some weird stuff going on there. So to me, that's a concern. And I could see Seattle taking a step back this year because I think it might take them a little while to figure out the offense if they figure it out at all.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of what I don't like is there's just so much projection. And I know that's not really a tangible answer in the whole thing, but like I like Ricky White. I like Elijah Arroyo. I like Torrey Horton. Like I like all these guys they drafted. Are they ready to contribute right away? Like, hey, if Arroyo takes the tight end spot and runs with it, because a lot of people thought he was a first-round player.
Yep.
All right, Sam's probably going to have a better year, and they're going to be better. If he can't and he's not ready to go or he's hurt or any of these different things, like, great. Now it's like the Noah Fant project, which I'm just not the biggest fan of. Like, is Kenneth Walker going to be awesome? And him and Charbonnet, are they going to be like this two-headed monster and awesome, or are they going to be fine? And like that's probably not going to be good enough, right? Or, you know, again, you mentioned Kupp and Valdez-Scantling and Jigba and like Jake Bobo. They have a lot of names, and I think there's a lot of like potential to be very good, but I don't know if they're going to be very good. And I think, again, that's maybe just kind of on my end. And then also what I don't love, I like the defense a lot. They still feel like they're missing like one more pass rusher. I still feel like I don't know how to explain it. And maybe it's Byron Murphy takes the next step, or like Leonard Williams is a really good player. I don't want my pass rush center around Leonard Williams, right? I want it to be, he can be do an all type of player. I've seen that. Like, I don't know. To me, I don't like their defense a lot. I don't love it. I think it's like a good group with a good coordinator, and they should be a good group, right? I don't think that's anything wrong with that, but I think offensively, it's just too much projection for me. They're relying on a lot of young guys or a lot of like much older veterans, and they're relying on a quarterback that, again, as much as I like it, I haven't seen Sam start 2 years in a row like that in a while. So, you know, we're going to kind of find out. And also, transparently, I don't like it because I think they're in the team with one of the best teams in the division with one of the best teams in the league, and then two other teams who are going to be very competitive. And just it's a tough division to be in. Kind of, they just scream 7-10 to 9-8. And if Sam's good, it's maybe 9-8, 10-7. And if Sam's not so good, it's 6-11, 7-10. And like we're going into year three, like, do they have a quick hook with Sam? Is Mike McDonald really the guy? I don't think that's the place you really want to live. And they're betting a lot of eggs on, again, and a lot of projections.
Yeah. Sounds like, you think that it's going to be a little bit of a dip in the other direction.
It might be a better team than last year, but a worse record. I just like last year, actually, Gino wasn't very, like, he had a lot of weird turnovers in the middle of the year. And they ended up, you know, even like the Jets game, they had no business winning that game. It's not because boy covered the Jets. Nothing to do with that. Like, watch the game. The Jets were 14-3, 21-7, and the Jets like had one of the weirdest second halves ever. Like, there was just some wins in there that I'm like, is that repeatable? I don't know.
Yeah, I think Gino 15 picks last year, if memory serves me.
I think, right? So 21-17 or no? Maybe it's a lot of weird.
15. Yeah. Before we get to our next team, I'm going to get serious for a second. I want to talk to you about life insurance. And when I was younger and just married, what do you need that for? You're not worried about it. Then all of a sudden, you buy a house, you have a kid, you have another kid, and it's like, what's the most important thing is to make sure that, knock on wood, if anything happened to me, that my family is taken care of and those bills can be paid. And it really sort of rang true to me. And that's why I'm telling you about life insurance, and I'm telling you about Ethos, online platform that makes getting life insurance fast and easy to protect your family's future in minutes, not months. No complicated process. It's 100% online, so there's ease to it. No medical exam required. just a few health questions, and you get a quote in as little as 10 minutes, and you can get same-day coverage without ever leaving your home. Life insurance is more affordable than you think with Ethos. You can get a free quote, and customize a rate that fits your budget. You can get up to $3 million in coverage, which is crazy. Some policies as low as $2 a day, billed monthly. 3 million families have completed their applications and trusted Ethos to help find the right coverage. 4.8 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot with over 2,400 reviews. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos. Get your free quote at ethos.com/all32. That's Ethos, ethos.com/all32 to get a free quote from Ethos. Thank for them for being a part of our program. All right, let's move on now to the Arizona Cardinals. I might surprise you with where I'm feeling and how I'm feeling about the Cardinals. 8-9 last year, 12th in total DVOA, 11th on offense, 14th on defense. What I like, Will, coaching again. I think, not totally positive, but I think Jonathan Gannon is a good coach, and I'll tell you why. I feel like this team is the arrow's pointing up, and he has them moving in the right direction. Their defense, especially again last year, second half of the season, really started to take off. Borderline, as I mentioned, top 10 defense over the last 8-9 games of the season. And when you look at sort of the pieces that they've added, got Will Johnson in the second round. You know, the Michigan corner was top 5, top 10 pick, but there are concerns about the knee. Like, that's a bet that if he stays healthy, even if it's a one contract thing, like you're getting an elite player at pick 47 and not at pick 8, which would be pretty sweet if you're the Cardinals. I love the secondary, the collection of players there. Garrett Williams, a really good football player that nobody talks about, was awesome last year, particularly doing a very good job against top receivers. They're one of the best teams in football. In fact, they were number 1 against number 1 receivers last year, and they were in the top 5 against tight ends last year, which speaks to Budda Baker, Max Melton, who really came on in the second half of last year as well. And as I said, you add Will Johnson, like there's pieces in place for that secondary to continue to be really, really good. I like the aggressiveness with which Gannon plays defense, and maybe they won't have to be as aggressive this year because they dealt with some injuries, but like they were the third most team in coverage 0 last year, 6.4%. Like he wasn't afraid to get after people, and they were pretty good at it. And then what they did this offseason was they added some graybeards on the defensive line, right? Calais Campbell, who still, despite the age, has been a really productive player, was last year, and Dalvin Tomlinson. They drafted Walter Nolen out of Ole Miss, so really putting a lot of resources into that defensive line. So maybe they can pull back a little bit on some of the blitz stuff. But then you add that to Darius Robinson, Josh Sweat brought on in free agency, and maybe Josh Sweat isn't totally worth the money, but Gannon has experience with him. So, like, now you have this really nice defensive line rotation on paper that, again, could allow for them to be a team that, hey, our secondary is really good. Now we don't have to blitz as much because we're trusting our front to get to it. So I really like the defense. I really like what Gannon's done with the defense. Again, big year for him. This is year 3. But let me just jump at. I feel like the arrow's pointed up. I feel like this is a better team than the one last year that, again, finished 8-9. How about you?
Wow. All right. I like, how am I going to phrase this? I like the fact that they have some of this young roster with another year under their belt. I think you mentioned this a little bit with the Rams. I think we mentioned a little bit actually with Seattle, where, like, you know, hey, there's some really fun, promising guys, right? Like another year of Michael Wilson's exciting. Another year of Paris Johnson. Obviously, Marvin Harrison looks like a superhuman demigod if you watch any of these before and after pictures. I don't know what creatine he's taken, but my God.
but I'd like some.
Yeah, I'd like to look like that again. Trey McBride gets paid. I think it's really nice to keep that. Their offense should be fun. I think they have a solid offensive line. I don't think it's a great unit. I think it's a solid unit that can always, if they took a, offensive lineman in the first round, like would have been fine. They obviously, took Connor Hayden, and things like that. I think this is all, to me, on Kyler, which I'll get to in a second. But yeah, I like the defense as well. Like, I like the idea of Will Johnson and Walter Nolen and Josh Sweat all coming in. You mentioned Campbell, Tomlinson. Like, they're running a lot of bodies, whether veterans, young guys with very, very high ceilings, but also very, very high floors. I mean, very low floors, which I will get to also in a second. But generally speaking, I think they have a good group. There's a good core there. I think they'll be somewhat similar to last year. There was moments where they were a team that were like, they're definitely going to be a playoff team. And then obviously there were moments where that was not so much the case. So to me, I think what I like is they've got a good core of young players, and they made a lot of additions that if they pan out, high floor guys like Tomlinson, Campbell, and really high ceiling guys like, Johnson, Nolen, etc., they could be a very nice group on paper. I'll start with what I don't like, which I still think Kyler's a question mark for me. I got a lot of pushback from people around the league that saw our quarterback rankings are like, what the blank? Like, why don't you like Kyler? And my answer is kind of similar to what I said last week, that I need to see him play 17 games back-to-back years. I think that's important. I want to see just more consistency. Like, I just feel like he's been the same player for 4 or 5 years, and or 6 years, right? Like, was he going to year 7? I don't think it's too much to ask for you to, if you're not going to take a step, like, now's the time. It just feels like he's been good for a long time, but it's never really felt like, I almost feel like he was better 4 years ago. And then obviously he had the knee injury and the bad playoff performance, and it kind of feels like he's back to being good. He's a good quarterback, but is he better than Stafford? Can he needs to be better than Darnold this year for them to be competitive. He needs to be better than Brock Purdy, probably, to be honest, to be competitive. And he had moments last year. Again, we saw it in San Francisco early in the year. Like, Kyler can take over. That's what's so frustrating about him. It's like, you see it. Even the Jets team was like, I know the Jets mailed it in, but he was awesome. He was fantastic in that game. And then it's like, you watch other times, like, what are you doing? Like, you're not a new starter. That shouldn't happen. I guess what I also don't love is they're feel very high floor, but very low floor, very high ceiling with a lot of their moves. Kyler being one of them, obviously, right, as a quarterback. Marvin Harrison, year 2, it should switch on, and that should be awesome. But, like, Walter Nolen's got to be really good. Like, he took him in the first round, and I'm a little worried. I didn't love a lot of the pre-draft stuff with him. He's a really fun, awesome player. I just feel like, I get that dude locked in for 17 straight weeks, and it's going to be a big ask. Can they get Will Johnson to be healthy? Can Josh Sweat be the same player he was in Philly in a number 1 role, right? I think that's something that's important. Baron Browning, again, Zaven Collins. Like, you just look around their roster, and it's like, it excites you because there's all these names, and there's a lot of young, infused talent from around the league. I just get a little worried that, like, this team might surprise people and go 12-5. I also feel like there's a world in which it kind of just is what it was last year, and it's like 7-10, 8-9 again. We're like, do we keep Gannon? Do we move Gannon? Do we keep Kyler? Do we move off him? I don't know. There's just too much, a little variance for me where, again, there's a lot of guys they're betting on. Calais Campbell eventually is probably just going to be old.
Right.
Or like Dalvin Thompson's probably just going to be old at some point. Yep. And you just get worried does that happen at the same time where Nolan's not ready and Will Johnson's not ready and Zaven Collins never clicks it on? Like, I get a little worried of, what if all these things happen at the same time and it's not in the right way? I'm too hard on Kyler still. I know.
Well, I had him 16th in our quarterback ratings. I looked it up. You had him 20th. The pro Kyler crew will tell you that was his best season since 2021. Okay, that it really started to turn, and even though they didn't play great down the stretch, it wasn't all on him. The anti-Kyler crowd will tell you, like, look at his numbers in the fourth quarter. Look at his numbers in 1-score games. Look at his numbers when pressured, which you would think someone with his physical gifts, his running ability, would be able to handle it. Not so much. They were all bottom third of the league, bottom half of the league last year. They're 16, 26, and 1 in 1-score games. And again, that's not with Kyler as quarterback. And that's obviously not entirely a Kyler stat. Wins and losses, not entirely a quarterback stat, but that is something to note. I'll give you another one that I think will impact the quarterback. I don't think they did enough at wide receiver. They're running back Michael Wilson again, who 2 years ago looked like, okay, maybe he's a legit number 2, 3 guy. Last year wasn't that good. Greg Dortch, like, I like Dortch, but like, he's a 4. Like, You're asking him to be a 3. And it sort of leads me to my X factor, which I think is Marvin Harrison, because of all the guys that were picked in that draft, he was the one, right, of the top, whatever. Like we liked the top end of that draft was obviously awesome, and it played out that way. But like everybody looked at Harrison and was like, he's a no-brainer. The argument in New England was like, he's better than the third quarterback. You should just take Harrison and, trade up and get Bo Nix or somebody, which, Bo Nix ends up going 12, so that wouldn't have happened. But point being, like, he was just, everybody considered him to be like a lock. Like that guy is going to be really good right away. He's going to be safe. He was pretty good, but not great. He struck, again, not a huge speed merchant. So like not huge separation like you saw some of the highlights with Neighbors. You didn't see those plays with Harrison. I think they have to figure out more ways to get him the football. But to me, there's still a ton on him, and they didn't do enough to sort of help alleviate some of that stress.
You know what I think, Mike, was weird? 116 targets, only 62 catches. That's got to – He didn't get 190 targets where this stuff happened. It means, okay, the number's a little out of whack. I just feel like they got to do a better job of him. They all combined need to do a better job of, like, when he's throwing the football, it needs to be a little bit more of a lock that's going to be a completion. You mentioned the receiver thing. That I transparently, have the depth charts up, obviously, just looking over my notes. For some reason, I went back to my notes. They have Xavier Weaver, and I was like, am I, like, okay? When did they get Xavier Worthy? And I'm like, Will, I thought I was going, like, hallucinating. That was insane. My X factor for them is, you'd think I'd say Kyler. And I'm not going to say Kyler because we've talked enough about him. My X factor is going to be Walter Nolen, because if Walter Nolen's this disruptive force that he can be at times and he plays to his draft slot, hey, man, that defensive line is going to be pretty good. And they're going to get after the quarterback, and it's going to open up, different things for Josh. So we've seen when Josh Sweat has a good interior pass rusher next to him, the dude can wreak some havoc. We've seen it. If he's a total bust, you cannot afford that again on defense. They just went through this Xavier Collins experience. They've gone through some of these guys on defense specifically who have not panned out. Walter Nolen's good. Like in a conference where, in a division where, do we love San Francisco's interior defensive line? Do we love Seattle's? Do we like Zabel and some of these young guys? Do we love the Rams' interior offensive line? Because if Nolen's good, is he wreaking havoc? And is he helping them steal one or two games in the division where, to your point, they're better than, I'll say they're about the same as last year. But like I mentioned before, I could definitely be convinced, hey, man, Kyler's going to have it switch on just even more consistently. Harrison's good. Nolen, Johnson are impact rookies, and they win 10 or 11 games. I don't know if it's like, I'm not there yet. I'm more like the 8 to 9 win range. I feel like this division is going to be like kind of like last year. Rams 10, 11 wins. We'll get to the Niners here in a second once you give your, but like Arizona and Seattle kind of clustered where like high upside, but frankly, there's a low floor for both these teams.
Yeah, I mentioned Harrison's the X factor. I do want to mention Darius Robinson, who was second round pick out of Missouri, was awesome at the Senior Bowl 2 years ago. Had a calf injury that basically didn't allow him to get on the field till December, and he was just fine in December. Like, I think we expect more out of him. So if he can take a year or two leap, which would start just by being on the football field, because he is a physical freak on the defensive line, again, that just gives him another body up front to cause havoc. Let's finish off with San Francisco. 6-11 last year, which, 14th in total DVOA, 9th on offense, 13th on defense, 31st on special teams. So you fix that. Some of that kicking problems as well. Will, what I like, I know the offense is going to be good. I don't know if it'll be great, but you saw it last year. I just mentioned the numbers. 9th in total DVOA on offense, on offensive DVOA, even with the injuries to Ayuk and Debo being out of shape and hurt all the time. And like McCaffrey goes down. One, I have to Mason. It was like they lost their entire backfield. Backups to the backups even went down, and they were still very effective offensively, and the numbers even take a dip because they punted on the last game of the year because it didn't matter. I don't think they minded losing. They get McCaffrey back. They'll get Ayuk back at some point. They signed Kittle to the contract extension. So I think, you're betting on obviously these guys staying healthy, which is not, considering their injury histories, is not the easiest thing to do. Although the raves about McCaffrey right now are ridiculous. Again, we'll see what happens when he's in pads and if he pulls a hamstring again. I also like the idea of adding Robert Saleh to defense. We talked about Saleh as a head coach. Not that great. Defensive coordinator, maybe that's what he was born to do. He knows what Kyle wants. Kyle's run through a couple defensive coordinators in the last couple of years. At their best, Saleh was their DC. He gets him back. There's pieces there for him to work with because I think they drafted extremely well and they focused on the defensive side of the ball. Mykel Williams, Alfred Collins, the big man out of Texas in the interior. CJ West, really good player out of Indiana, another interior player. And Upton Stout, likely going to slide in and get some reps at slot corner. Really good last year in college. So they looked at their defense, said, we've got to get it better. They addressed that heavily in the draft. And I think the offense will be kind of what the offense always is, which is good to damn good.
Yeah, like I don't disagree with some of kind of your takes there in terms of I like the fact that they should get a lot of guys back healthy. Like McCaffrey back, Ayuk back,
Trent Williams,
another year of Brock Purdy. Like, I don't know, I like Dominic Pooney last year. I thought he had a nice year. Kittle, another year. Like, there's a lot of reasons to be like, hey, on paper, you still see some of the big names. I think Fred Warner was very hurt last year and like somehow playing. I don't know how he's honestly doing.
He played pretty awesome.
Yeah, he was awesome, and I like some of the additions, especially interior West and Collins. To me, not your typical solid defensive tackles. Might be a good thing. They need to be able to stop the run, and they need guys to eat blocks and let Fred Warner and some of these guys run around. So to me, I like some of those additions, or kind of some of those guys. I love the Bryce Huff addition. Huff was a 10+ sack guy under Saleh 2 years ago, and a lot went down in Philly last year. That was kind of the one they were so good at. We didn't talk a lot about it, but that was obviously, I think, a bad fit all around for everybody. And that's an addition for minimal cost. Saleh brings in some more of his guys, like a Jason Pinnock. Another year of Malik Mustafa. I like. There's a lot of different things there. To go to what I don't like, this roster is relying on like 6 or 7 guys to stay healthy at upper ages or with very big injury history. I don't know what McCaffrey is going to look like, because if he kind of falls off the cliff for running backs, I kind of mentioned this with Devontae, where like they're good, and it's like, oh my God, it's over. I hope it's not over because McCaffrey's an awesome player. I just feel like they got a lot of, is Mykel Williams going to start day one? Like, are we sure?
You don't like Mykel as much as I do. I love Mykel.
But I don't hate the idea of in a vacuum if you didn't tell me where they picked Mykel. Mykel and Bryce Huff is one edge. Like, they could combine them into one player. They'd be Nick Bosa, and they have Nick Bosa on the other side. So like, in theory, 4 guys in their prime, 3 guys that are rookies, like that defensive line should be awesome. I just feel like, some changeover at linebacker. We'll see kind of what happens there next to Fred Warner. The secondary, I like some of the guys. There's just been a lot of changeover there. And again, it's like, we like all in on Ronaldo Green and like all in on, Lenore is a good player, but I don't know if I want him as my, I don't know. I'm really honestly mostly worried about the offense and the injuries, because if like they just don't have depth, like, and even, Jawan Jennings, this morning as we're recording this, like wants a new deal, and I don't blame him. He had an awesome year last year, like 60+ catches, 800+ yards. Like he was an awesome player last year. He's 28 and he's their third receiver. So I don't know if I don't know what they're going to pay him, if they pay him at all, but I worry, Mike, a little bit of like, it felt like 2 or 3 years ago, there's like, they have like 27 weapons, and it's like, dude, any guy that comes on the field, and Kyle's going to get the most out of everybody, but I don't love the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't love the offensive line, I'd love to love the weapons like a little bit more. I don't know what Ayuk's going to be because we talk about with Diggs so much, and we'll get to Diggs obviously. And ACLs for receivers are really tough, and there was a lot of issues a year ago with in camp, not practicing, doing the whole thing. He gets hurt. He had a bad year. Pearsall had a lot of drama last year. Obviously, he shot in the chest and like kind of came on at points. But again, he's a first-round player. He needs to be a first-round receiver. Kittle, Trent Williams, McCaffrey are all old. And like, I hope none of them get old, on the field this year. But there's a very real possibility of guys that have been through, they're playing 19, 20 games a year for a while. We saw with Debo, man, it kind of just happens. And so I guess what I don't like is really just the offense in general of week by week. You could convince me they could beat anybody. But I worry it's like, what are we going to get there? So that's kind of my biggest, I guess, with the Niners.
Yeah, I guess what I don't like is replacing major snaps at key spots, especially defensively. Javarius Ward was a really good player for them. Drake Greenlaw, who obviously wasn't really available to them much last year as he recovered from the torn ACL in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Hufanga, who's now their safety, who's an absolute maniac, dealt with a bunch of injuries last year. He's in Denver along with Greenlaw. Leonard Floyd, which, again, based on the Huff edition and the drafting of Michael Williams, you're probably fine there. But, hey, you played him a lot, so you're replacing him with at least unknown quantities in your system. Lack of depth on the offensive line in particular. And, look, this is a league problem. Offensive lines aren't deep anywhere pretty much unless you're Philadelphia. But, like, they signed Andre Dillard, who I think has proven –
Speaking of crappy Eagles offensive line.
Yeah, he has proven he's not a good football player, but that's kind of where they're at. You invest all those draft picks to trade up for Trey Lance. They've made a lot of big moves to win now and cost themselves draft picks. This was the first year where they actually had their full complement of picks. And like I said, I like what they did in the draft, but you're talking about 3 or 4 years there where you didn't have a ton of picks to make.
Doesn't it feel like, Mike, like I don't know how to – you just mentioned them going all in, right? I think we talked a lot about this last year. It felt like this was the year to like – this past offseason was the year to like, hey, they moved off Debo, like almost – not saying you trade everybody, right? But like,
right.
Don't you – do guys with job security, don't you say, hey, like, do we start over and try to quick rebuild this thing around an offensive core of – I don't know. Your team core is going to be, Bosa, Michael, Fred – and then on offense, we're going to try to build this thing around. Like, we'll keep Kittle.
Purdy, Pearsall.
Yeah, Pearsall, Ayuk. Like, we're going to do that, and we're going to move off of, like, you can't really move McCaffrey, but, like, did they look and say, hey, like, we talked about could they have traded, Brock Purdy? Like, does some contender come in and be like, we'll give you a 1 for Trent Williams because we just need a year of a left tackle. And, like, there's so much desperation. And why really want to pay Trent $28 million at age 39? Like, these are great players. I'm not saying that they should have done this. I just thought there was a window here for them to maybe reset the decks and like, hey, the Niners have 12 picks inside the top 100 and they can reset the cap a little bit and start over. And Kyle can kind of shape the team how he wants. I just felt like there was a chance there to do that. And I don't know if they're good enough to win a title anymore. So now they're in that window of like, weird example. I wonder if you'll follow me on this. Like, feel little 2003 Rams. Post, Mark Bulger, that's the Steve Smith year. Like, they were good, but like, could they have won a title that year? I don't know. And it felt like they kind of kept going all in, and they kept the whole core around that was aging, right? And Torrey Holt and Bruce and it was like last year Marshall Faulk, and like, it just felt like they kind of didn't read the room. And then Marshall Faulk got really old really quick and had the turf toe and never is the same. Bruce retires, Holt goes to Jacksonville, Pace gets old. Yep. It's like, oh my God. We're on our third coach. And, I don't want to see that from this group because they've been so successful for 2019 to 2024, Mike. They were freaking awesome.
Yeah. Just win a super, like is the best team of that group of that era so far that hasn't won a Super Bowl. Lastly, dicey offensive line. Obviously Trent Williams at left tackle, if he's healthy, he's, ageless, but The interior, Jake Brendel, I think, was allowed the 6 most pressures of any center. They don't have any idea what they're doing at left guard right now. McKivitz at right tackle, probably his best year, but what are we really talking about? McKivitz's best year. It's not like that makes me go, oh yeah. That said, I feel better about them. I think so many things went wrong last year that I just find it hard to believe that they're at least not a 500, 9-8, 10-7 type football team. And look, if McCaffrey, Williams, those guys stay healthy, we could be talking about a huge reversal of last year. It could be an 11-win team. It could be a 12-win team.
By the way, my Rams example, let's see if pretty positive. Yep. So they won 12-4, right? They lose, obviously, to the Panthers in that insane Steve Smith walk-off over the double overtime game. It's one of the better games in NFL history. The reason I use that example is the year before, things didn't go right. They went 7-9, a ton of the injuries coming off in the Super Bowls and all that stuff, right? They had the down year, big up year. And it was you could see that still, right? That core group, in 2003 still had it, right? Some of those guys are still producing at a crazy level. Bulger had the weirdest year of all time, 22 picks, 22 touchdowns. But Fall kind of was down, but hey, Bruce and Holt and all these guys came on and they were a really fun team. So that's in there, right? I'm going to use this example. I'm thinking we're going to stick to this 2003-2025 Rams example where it's in there to be a really good team and they can put together weeks. I used to get Mike, I'm just worried over 17 games with the workload this team's had for 6 years now. Kyle's going to have to get a little creative, I think, to really maximize Purdy. We talked about it, and I'll use my X factor here. Brock Purdy's got to be better than the 15th best quarterback in the league. He's got to be closer to Jared Goff in Detroit than Tua in Miami or Trevor Lawrence or Kyler or these guys. Brock Purdy's got to be the second best quarterback in the division, I think, for them to be really, really competitive. And he's paid like it. So I don't think it's asking – I'm not trying to sound like Nick Wright and all these people. Brock Purdy stink. I don't think he's bad. I'm 15th. I think he's bang average. I'd like to see him be the 10th best quarterback in the league and be the second best quarterback in the division or the first best quarterback in the – hey, Stafford takes a little step back and if he does that, the Niners are going to be right where you said, where they're a 10, 11-win team. If he's the 15th best quarterback, they're probably an 8 or 9-win team. That's just the reality of it.
He's my X factor as well. I had him 15th as well. I think he's capable.
Isn't it most obvious? Quarterback's always X factor. He's such an X factor.
Yeah, because I think he is capable of being the 10th best guy, the 9th best guy. I think that's there, especially in that system, the way he runs that system. I mean, Kyle really does like him. It's maybe the first quarterback that Kyle's had in his time there that he is fully embraced and loved. And now they paid him. Okay. Well, we pay you. We had to let some pieces go. Now you have to elevate your play. I think he's capable, but we will see.
Mike, can we hit on one thing real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, shoot.
Can the Browns guys stop getting arrested? No, what are we doing? Seriously, I might pick them to win 2 games. I don't get it. And it's just, I feel for Stefanski. Maybe we're just Stefanski defenders here, but they're such a mess right now, and they can't figure it out.
Yeah. Rolling the dice on questionable characters because you're in desperate need of talent. And this is
always ends well, right?
Yeah, this is what happens when you do that, right? That's bound. Some of these things are going to blow up in your face, and in some cases, it all blows up in your face. That's going to put a wrap on the NFC West preview. We'll come back to you later in the week with the AFC West preview and maybe some news around the league. We will see what happens here this week. Possibilities.
Looks like potentially an extension by tomorrow, right? We saw that.
Yep.
Sauce Gardner has been in the rumor mill. Garrett Wilson guys before camp that could be potentially extended. So we'll obviously touch on that if that stuff happens before the end of the week.
Absolutely. And a reminder for those listening to the show, we ask you to subscribe to the podcast, and leave a review. For those watching the show on CLNS, hit that like button. Subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Patriots and league content. And please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video drops. He is Will. I am Mike. We will see you later in the week. Enjoy.